Hello, ninjas and ninjas, and welcome to another episode of the Exposure Ninja Digital Marketing Podcast. My name's Tim Cameron Kitchen. I'm a best-selling digital marketing author and head ninja at Exposure Ninja, which is an agency based in the UK. This show is all about helping you generate more leads and sales from your website and also keeping you safe in the process. And on that topic, this episode, I'm delighted to introduce Samuel Scott. And now he's here to talk about something that I read an article which he wrote about in The Drum, which is called GDPR. And this is a big piece of EU legislation which could potentially absolutely transform the very essence of what we're doing with digital marketing. So anybody who's running Google Analytics, anyone who's collecting email addresses, running AdWords, doing Facebook ads, all of these things could be heavily impacted by some new legislation that's coming out on the 25th of May, 2018. And I think when you hear the implications of what this thing could be about, you'll be staggered that there is not more attention around this. So fascinating chat with Samuel. We talked all about what GDPR means. And we also get into a bit of an argument between brand building and direct response as well, but that's standard for the Exposure Ninja podcast. So I hope you really enjoy the episode, and don't forget to check out the free website and marketing review which we run on our site, which is all about helping you generate more leads and sales. So you fill in the details, we'll provide a 20-minute video that shows you how to generate more leads and sales. We'll take apart your competitors' advertising as well, show you how well it's working, and plan you out a roadmap that you can follow to increase the leads and sales that you're generating in 2018. So go to exposureninja.com in order to request that. That's exposureninja.com. Anyway, without further ado, enjoy the show with Samuel Scott. Samuel, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Maybe for those who haven't read you in The Drum or seen you at a conference, perhaps you could give a bit of an intro into who you are and what you're all about.
Sure, I'll give you a very brief introduction. My first career, I was a journalist and a newspaper editor in America. And then I went into marketing, had various agency in-house consulting roles. And now I am the promotion fix columnist for The Drum. My column comes out every 2 weeks. And I'm also a keynote marketing speaker at conferences around the world. And can I just mention I'm booking dates now for 2018. So if anyone's interested, feel free to look me up.
Awesome. And you're kind of known for cutting through the bullshit, aren't you?
I try to. The sad fact is it's actually not that difficult of a job because there's so much of it in the marketing world.
There is indeed. Today we're going to be talking about something which I first read about in your column on The Drum, GDPR. It's something pretty big that's happening, and I don't think anyone probably listening to this show is going to be prepared for the magnitude of what is apparently about to happen on the 25th of May 2018. So perhaps you could give us a bit of an intro into exactly what GDPR is.
Sure, I'll be happy to. Basically, GDPR stands for General Data Protection Regulation, and it is essentially a goal by the EU government or EU Commission, I believe, basically to stop all non-consensual tracking of consumers within the EU. And it sounds like a pretty broad and very big goal, and it's got some teeth behind it. Basically, here's what this regulation will do. Basically, for anyone who is physically located in the EU, not data centers, but people who are physically located in the EU, any company that wants to track their personal data for marketing or other purposes has to get their opt-in consent to be tracked, basically, to have their data be harvested, stored, and used. That's the first thing. And it's not just, ticking the little box in the terms of service and hiding this I consent language in the terms of service. This is likely going to be a pop-up that will have to appear on everyone's screens going, do you give this company consent to collect your personal data? Do you consent to all tracking or just first-party cookies, just third-party cookies? It will give you options. And people will have to click to choose one of these options or just say, I want no tracking, none of it. That's the first thing. Consumers will have to give opt-in consent starting on, May 25th, 2018. The second thing is that consumers can withdraw their consent at any time for any reason at any point in the future, and companies have to agree with that. And what they have to do is any consumer can request or actually demand that companies erase all of their collected data, and companies have to do it. That's the third thing. The final thing is that basically, okay, so what we've seen whenever we hear of data breaches, whereas, say Uber is hacked or, Yahoo was hacked, we always hear about these massive breaches of data years after the fact. So what GDPR does on the fourth point is it mandates that companies basically publicly admit that they've been breached, that people's personal data has been breached, and to give a timely accounting of what happened, what exactly happened, whose information was accessed, what they're doing to fix the problem, and so on. They can't do it 5 years later when everyone forgets it happened. They have to do it straight away as soon as possible. So those are the four main points of this GDPR regulation. And what it comes is it comes with teeth. That if any company is found to be not in compliance with this EU regulation, then the EU can charge them either 20 million euro per violation or 4% of total global top line revenue from the entire preceding calendar year. It's whichever of those two is larger. That's per violation. So if one person in France thinks that, I'll just say Google, just, for an example company, improperly, is harvesting their data without their consent, they can file a complaint. And if the EU finds Google to be in violation, that one violation, again, 20 million euro or 4% of all global company top line revenue or turnover, I think, as you say in the UK.
So this is absolutely huge, isn't it? Perhaps just to give it a bit of context, let's take something like Google Analytics, which pretty much every single website uses. And at the moment, user consent is kind of implied. Is Google Analytics going to be affected by this?
That is a very good question because people, when you use an app like Google Analytics, you do have to agree to their terms of service, and thereby you have to agree that Google will be using some information. Now, the problem is it's not just for even a single app like Google Analytics. Take any given what's called like a MarTech stack or an ad tech stack of platforms. The other major point of GDPR is what's called potability. It means that whenever personal data is transferred along a stream of MarTech platforms, from this platform collects the data, this one parses it, this one stores it, this one analyzes it, this one generates insights. So what people will have to do is, they will have to opt in to give their consent to have their data be processed through every single step for every single platform along the way and down the chain. So basically, it's going to greatly disrupt, and even though I hate that word, it's going to disrupt ad tech and martech because every single company that touches any person's data at any point will have to get that person's opt-in. So again, it's not just even a single app like Google Analytics. It's all apps at any point along the marketing food chain.
So pretty much everyone who is doing any sort of digital marketing at the moment is not compliant with this, right? Because if we've might have a Facebook pixel on our site so that we can run Facebook ads and build an audience. We might have Google pixels for Google audiences and remarketing. We might be building an email list. If we use a CRM like Infusionsoft, it might be tracking page views so that we can send people targeted content. So what's happening at the moment is pretty much everyone is falling foul of this. And then when the rules come in, we're all going to be in trouble, right?
Yes, exactly. Because according to some research I found from Princeton University, Google has tracking on about 75% of the the public internet, not the weird dark web stuff. But Google has some kind of tracking on 75% of the web, and Facebook is number 2 with 25%. So what happens is if you, as a marketing agency or company or what have you, if you have Google a tracking script on your website, then that means in order to use that data, you'll have to get the opt-in from both your company and Google will have to get opt-in from the people coming to your website and then, supplying their personal data.
Wow. So, yeah. I mean, this is going to be huge, isn't it? And I know Google must be working frantically behind the scenes to get some kind of, opt-in consent thing popping up when you visit a site with analytics. But
well, what I've seen so far is that, and again, it's not, I can't trace it directly to Google or Facebook or what have you, but we've started to see PR play, basically with these two companies, that these two companies, I predict, are going to start flooding marketing trade publications with bylined articles and columns and planted stories and what have you, arguing that GDPR is going to be bad for consumers and bad for the marketing industry and just, bad for everyone, when it's going to be complete and utter bullshit. I mean, to be honest. But this should have Google and Facebook very, very scared, because think about it. Facebook and Data's business is not me and you. Facebook, I mean, it's like we're not the customers. Obviously, we all know this. Facebook and Google collect our information and then sell it to advertisers or to who else? We're the product, not the customers. But think about even the bigger implications of this. Think about the whole high tech world, the whole startup world. How many companies out there say they have a certain business, but their actual business is using that other business as a front to collect data? For example, there was a story, a company called Unroll.me, I believe. It's this platform where analyzes your email for spam email subscriptions, and it says one click to unsubscribe from all this crap. A lot of people use it. So that's a front. What that company does is provide this service, but what people don't realize, and this is all public information, you can Google it, what this company has been doing is actually scanning people's emails for records of using Uber or using Lyft or what have you. And what this company has done is selling information on these people to Lyft, to try and, so Lyft can use that data to try and get these people to stop using Uber and go to Lyft. That's the real business of Unroll.me. And it's again, you can look it up online. It's ingenious, but it's also freaking scary. And I mean, really. So think about how many tech companies out there are doing the same thing. Again, all their scripts and products and whatever, it's all front just to collect data. Basically, the high tech world is a bunch of data collection companies. That's the real business model. They collect data and they sell it. So think about what's going to happen on May 26th, 2018, when all of a sudden, all this data that these companies have been collecting forever is now illegal and no longer valid, and they have to just gut it all and start from scratch. All these valuations and stock prices are going to go down. I mean, I'm not a finance guy, but I would, really be surprised if the valuations were not affected, because what GDPR is going to do is to tell these companies, any information you have collected on people living in the EU that you have collected prior to May 25th, 2018 is now gone. It's illegal to have. So any data that marketers have or companies have, they have to just gut all of that data and again, start from zero after getting opt-in consent. One article I found estimated that 75% of marketing data in the UK is going to be rendered obsolete when GDPR goes into effect.
Obsolete is one thing. It's actually, I think I saw you describe it somewhere as actually being toxic, isn't it? Because if you have that data, you're now in trouble. So the people that have collected that data, is that right?
Oh, yes. I mean, this data could become a toxic asset, because, we've gone so far down the rabbit hole of, personal data and tracking. I'm not even sure every company even knows the extent of their tracking operations anymore. How many people in Google know exactly where data is being collected from where and by who and who's it on? I mean, companies could be exposed to many, many liabilities and not even know it, because they've just assumed that things will go on as usual and they can just keep collecting and selling this data, personal data on us. And so I think a lot of companies don't even realize that they have these liabilities, 20 million euros a pop.
It's going to get expensive, even for a company like Facebook. I guess, something like Facebook, the advertising platform without the data, that's Facebook's biggest asset, isn't it? And Facebook without the advertising platform is really not an appealing stock. The numbers don't look very good, do they? So they must be working extremely hard on this.
Well, I would love to be a fly on the walls of, their, big conference rooms, maybe an off the record fly even. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're talking about it. I'm sure more and more people are going to be talking about this as the May deadline approaches. But I see tech people actually, I'm sorry, I see tech people talking about this, but I don't
Mm.
see marketing people talking about this. I can tell you in the drum, they've done estimations, and something like, what was the last article I saw was 60% of marketing agencies today still haven't even freaking heard of GDPR, let alone actually worked at being in compliance with it. And it was
Wow.
something like, yeah, and it was something even a higher percentage, I think, said that if they got one one successful claim against them, they would go out of business. Like a greater percentage of that of agencies or consultancies or what have you, that, one hit from GDPR and they're done. They're out, they're bankrupt.
We kind of saw something to a much lesser extent with the cookie law. There were kind of claims that this is going to be Armageddon and everything was going to be, terrible. And then in the end, it kind of seemed a bit watered down, and we just install a plugin and everything is fine. Is there any chance that A, this won't happen, or B, it won't be as bad as it seems?
I assume you're speaking about whenever people, whenever anyone visits a website in the EU, there's always a disclaimer: this site uses cookies. Do you accept? That's what you're referring to, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure. Okay, so it'll be something similar, but it'll be even more. Here's
Mm.
how I explain that. It's not you're just not going to tick a box and go, oh yeah, okay, I give you consent, whatever. It's more than that. The box about cookies is just you agree. Yeah, okay, fine, done. But what GDPR, as far as all predictions say, is that what GDPR is going to mandate is that when you see this pop up, it's not going to be just, this site, may collect data, whatever. Do you agree? It's not going to be that simple. It's going to give you a list of options. I believe it's 4 options. The options are: yes, I agree to to all data tracking and what have you. It'll say, yes, I agree to only first party tracking, only third party tracking, or it's I accept, all tracking. So, obviously, we know about cookies and scripts and data collection, but when Bob Smith in Cornwall, I don't know if that's a standard British name, but I think the doctor used it actually. No, that was John Smith. He used John Smith.
Yeah.
So take John Smith in Cornwall. If he wants to go to a website and he sees, what level of data tracking, do you agree, for this website to use? He's going to go, what the hell? And he's not going to know what that means. So he might start research. He might start reading articles about, how his data is being used. And he might just get really freaked out. And, I'll just say, no, get me out of here. Because the more I think that GDPR will be something that will really inform, the common man, to use for lack of a better phrase, but things like that will really start to inform the public, to the extent that, tech companies are collecting and selling their personal data. On some level, I think people know it, but they don't want to face that. And I think now they're actually going to finally face it as of GDPR, and how it will make them GDPR will force them to make a choice as to how open they want their personal data to be.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because I've always taken the position with personal data that I'm happy for my info to be shared as long as it's anonymized, if it gives me a more relevant experience online. So, Facebook ads, I'd rather see ads for stuff that's of interest to me than is not interesting to me, as, selling smoking stuff or PPI. I'd rather see products that I've checked out before. So I guess we're forcing the public here to make a choice. Do you want a really intensely personalized experience online? And if so, there's going to have to be a data trade-off for that. But like you say, if you're faced with those 4 options and one of them says no tracking, that is, in that moment, that is the safest and easiest option to choose, isn't it? And I guess the second safest option is just to leave the site completely. It's just to bounce. So the chances that people are going to make that choice in that moment to accept the level of tracking that we're currently used to is absolutely minuscule, surely.
Yeah, actually, well, just to give you an example, one of the studies I cited in my talk on this topic in London and in Turkey, I believe it was 5%. So a company did a study where they mimicked, the pop-up that GDPR is going to force websites to show, to do like sort of like an A/B test, you could say. And what it did was it showed them, the options, and it said, let's see how many people click on what. So they did a lot of they did a lot of testing, and it turned out that only 5% of website visitors agreed to all tracking and data collection. Basically, only 5% of website visitors in this study agreed to the same level of unrestrained tracking that exists today. 75% said, I'm sorry, 95% said, no, thank you, to one degree or another.
So, listeners who are used to running analytics and all of that sort of stuff, what are we going to have to do here? Is it as simple as just installing a pop up and hoping that people say yes? Or are we going to be moving to an internet where we're essentially flying a bit blind? Like we can no longer rely on things like conversion tracking and retargeting lists and all of this stuff. Are we going to be rolling back to whatever 1997 before all of this stuff existed?
As a rule, I don't like to predict the future. I like to sort of posit scenarios because, I'm not a psychic or anything. But no, one thing that, since you mentioned, A/B testing and whatnot, I'll tell you another example. The GDPR regulation, as it currently is written, doesn't distinguish between first-party cookies and third-party cookies in terms of like data collection and tracking. So what that means is things like currency personalization for a user, or A/B testing, or if a site remembers a logged in user and wants to give a user a different experience the next time he comes, all of those things, people have to opt in to allow that. So even something as simple as A/B testing will no longer be able to be done just by default. To do A/B testing, then you'll have to gain the opt-in consent from everyone who visits the website. And then when your test fires, they'll have to ask for their permission, their consent. So, I don't want to go overboard and say, it's going to just completely kill analytics. But the thing is, we have to be aware that we're going to lose a lot of data once GDPR hits. And that's not always, to me, a bad thing, because for a couple of reasons. One, people don't realize that we've already lost a lot of data. Just for example, at a prior company, my job was director of marketing for a log analysis company, a log analysis software platform. And one thing I found was that when you actually look at the back-end server-side logs, which is the most accurate source of website traffic information, it is vastly different from what you see in a front-end platform like Google Analytics. Basically, analytics is not accurate because of ad blockers. Ad blockers don't only block ad networks, they also block all or most front-end website scripts from loading. I'm talking about things like HubSpot, Marketo, Google Website Optimizer, again, ad network, social media platforms, basically all of these front-end scripts. If you use any of the major ad blockers, then you're by default blocking those MarTech platforms as well, without you even realizing it. So if you're using Marketo or HubSpot or what have you, then everyone who visits your website using an ad blocker in the browser, that's cutting off their data from Marketo and HubSpot. So you're not getting that data because the scripts that you put on your browser aren't loading. They're being blocked. So we've lost a lot of data already, but most people don't realize that. And one thing I saw as well is that 25% of the world on average is using a VPN, which is just, spoof imposter data. I'm not saying I do it, of course, but if somebody in Israel wants to watch the Netflix US library, can fire up a VPN, fill the web, with this spoof imposter data, and every Netflix is going to think that he's, in Los Angeles or whatever. So I use a VPN myself, not for Netflix, obviously, but every time I browse the internet, every website I visit, they think I'm living in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And so, because here's the thing, even though I used to work in marketing, and now I write and speak about marketing, but even though I used to work in marketing, I've got 4 ad blockers, script blockers, and a VPN on my browser, because I don't want people like me to have access to my personal data.
I saw also some data. I think it was in one of your presentations about millennials, and is it 63% of millennials are using ad blockers? So it seems like this is something that is becoming more and more of a thing. Then obviously Apple announcing that Safari would remove tracking cookies after 24 hours or something. So you kind of get the impression that this is where things are going. It's just obviously, it's all coming at once, and it's coming much quicker than I think most people are expecting.
Right. Well, the reason is, and this shouldn't really surprise anyone, but the thing is, we in the marketing world live in a bubble. I'll be honest. Like when you just said, well, I like a personalized web experience, even if I have to give a little bit of data. Well, again, you're talking like a marketer. Again, John Smith in Cornwall doesn't think like that. He doesn't want to give his data to some creepy, weird tech people he's never met in his life. So your average person out there doesn't want to supply to their data floating around. Marketers tend to not really mind it so much because we're around it all the time. We're used to it. We we're acclimated, to this world, but again, we're 0.001% of the population. There was a study again. Yeah, this was in my GDPR presentation. Was that I believe it was the University of Pennsylvania. I forget who, but it was a study that went to a general audience and said, um, do you want targeted advertisements based on what companies know about you? It was phrased very general, and it was something like 62% said no, I don't want targeted ads based on my data. But that was just the beginning. Then what UPenn did was they went to the same people and said, okay, so now here's more information about how exactly all these companies are collecting your data and using it. And when you actually tell people how their data is being collected and harvested and used, that percentage jumped up to something to close to 80%, that they don't want targeted ads.
Hmm.
Again, a basic principle in marketing is called market orientation. We can't think like marketers. We need to think like the consumers to whom we are marketing. If you want to know what the public thinks about data collection and tracking, talk to, again, John Smith in Cornwall. Don't talk to other marketers.
Yeah, this is very true. It's a constant reminder watching user testing videos of the general public and seeing actually that how the rest of the population uses the internet is very different. And I guess this we've kind of been through this before, haven't we? This is why spam laws are in place, because marketers are given a technology and then we push it as far as we possibly can.
Oh yeah,
Make as much money as possible. Until it starts annoying the general public, then the government has to come in and legislate it all out. And then we kind of start from scratch and we'll find something else, we'll ruin it, and we'll just go through this cycle forever and ever, I guess.
Right. Well, there is a way out of the cycle, actually. Okay, so I'm going to go into a little bit of marketing theory. So just humor me for half a minute. There've always been two main categories of advertising: what's called advertising, and direct response or direct marketing. Direct marketing, is junk mail or now email. It's ads you see, like people giving away free pets, on a post on the street. It's telemarketing is direct response for the most part. Again, so direct marketing is highly targeted advertising on a personal basis. But the pro side is it's actually able to be tracked. We've always been able to track telemarketing or direct mail or catalogs or what have you. Now, on the other side of the coin, you have advertising or brand advertising, you could call it. And this is what you see usually on TV and billboards and radio and whatnot. and the point of direct marketing is to get a direct response. That's why it's called direct response. To call that toll-free number, to clip that coupon, to fill out the sales catalog and mail it back, to reply to an email, to click on something. The point of the direct response is to get a direct response. Now, the point of most advertising is to build a brand in people's heads over the long term. The pro side of advertising is that it's memorable. I remember ads I saw 30 years ago. I don't remember any direct response blog spam or Facebook ads that I see today or yesterday even. But the con side of advertising, of brand advertising, is that's not trackable. You can never, ever, ever get a precise sales figure on how many sales you got from this TV ad. You'll never be able to do it. The reason is just human beings are just too complex, and you can't ever track that. So basically 20 years ago, the web decided to go all in on direct marketing, on direct response, because the technology allowed us finally to track everything. And we did. So we tracked everything. And now we're tracking people. But the thing to remember is that people always hate direct marketing. That's why it's called junk mail or email spam. Nobody likes it. I mean, you can track ROI, you can try and increase the conversion rate, but at the end of the day, people think this is all crap. I'm biased. I have my own views as a marketer, but people have always so people hate direct marketing, but they tolerate advertising because it's not offensive. It's not tracking you. It's not jumping in front of you saying, do this now, do this now. It just sits there on your screen or on a billboard. You walk by it, whatever. Okay, fine. Um, so people hate direct marketing, but they tolerate advertising because once in a while, advertising is really funny or really insightful or informative, something that elicits a good response. No one ever got a good response from direct marketing. So, sorry,
The
that's a bit of
direct
a rant.
response marketer in me has to disagree. I mean, we see things like people fast forwarding ads and TV. Like, imagine if, I don't know if you know the Go Compare ads, but there's ads that are annoying. Like, if you said to people, how many of you guys want to see ads during commercial breaks? Like, how many of you value that? It's got to be pretty low. And maybe you see an ad on Instagram for a product and you like the look of it and you click through and buy. So surely, if direct advertising works, then a percentage of people aren't being annoyed by that. And that percentage are really the ones that the advertiser's going after.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing. So, say you send a piece of direct marketing collateral, could be email, it could be Instagram ad or a Facebook ad, whatever, it doesn't matter. Say you send this collateral to 1,000 people. You get a 1% response rate, which is crap. 10 people? 100 people?
Yeah.
I'm a marketer because I don't do math. I'm a writer.
You're
Okay,
an advertiser.
so you send this direct marketing collateral to 1,000 people. You get a 1% response rate. But what we don't realize is the other 99% you are annoyed by it, and they look at your brand in a bad way, in their heads. It's called signaling versus precision. It's like people build perceptions of brands in their heads based in part on how that brand is advertising. If a company advertises to you through really, really cheap and gaudy methods like stuffing flyers under your door, you're going to subconsciously think that that company is bad. That's called signaling because the type of marketing method signals the value of the brand. Now, if a company has the money and the creative capacity to put a big ad on TV, then that signals that the company is a high quality company because the marketing is high quality. So here's the thing. So the signaling, that's the term for it. Sure, you can say we got a 1% conversion rate on that direct marketing campaign, but you've signaled to the other 99% of people that your brand is cheap and tawdry. Now, is that really the best thing to do for long-term growth? I would argue no.
So let's take, for example, say a solicitor's firm.
Do you mean salespeople? Solicitors?
No, sorry. I mean like a lawyer.
Oh, a lawyer. Ah, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So a small lawyer's practice, and they obviously don't have necessarily the advertising budget to do a large brand campaign or get to the stage where there would be a memorable name. But what they can do is they can run some PPC ads for something like PPI claims. And we've done exactly this and got a 33% conversion rate on a free consultation about PPI. So that's a direct advertising method, isn't it? Because we're generating a lead for something that's, we're generating a lead. We're running an ad very specifically to do that thing. So how does how is it possible for a solicitor's or lawyer's firm to get a better response than that from an advertising campaign? I just don't see it.
Oh, you're right. Now, this is where I'm going to completely contradict myself. So get ready. Now,
Okay.
the one thing to keep in mind is that there are no hard and fast rules in marketing. If somebody says, X all the time is a good thing to do, they're full of crap. The thing is, yes, sometimes or even a lot of time, direct response campaigns can signal a low quality brand or company, but not always. It depends on the company and the market. Now, your example of lawyers, that's an example where I would say it's not a signal of low quality because it's for a service, it's for a person. It's not for a brand like Coca-Cola, like a cola or something. So if someone is looking specifically for legal advice, that they're searching Google for it, then obviously, they want to find an expert who is advertising himself as an expert. So that's an example of where I would say direct response is good. Again, I kind of paint too much with a broad brush when I speak because I'll say like 75% of the time direct response can look cheap. But again, yeah, it's not always. Your example is around the 25%.
Okay, so good advertising, I guess, good advertising, good direct response, as long as as long as it's good and it's not designed to annoy, that's what we're saying here.
Right. I mean, well, here's my basic point, and actually, I can't take credit for it. I'm quoting a man by the name of Bob Hoffman, the ad contrarian, a great guy with a great blog. Everyone should read it. His great line is that no non-web native brands have been built on social media or PPC or what have you, these direct response advertising platforms. No non-web native brands have been built using these mediums. No mustards, no Cokes, no beer, no toilet paper, no brands have been built on social media advertising, or through things like Google AdWords. And I think he's correct. So if you want to build a brand, which is not exactly what the lawyer is doing, but if you want to build a brand, then yeah, I would say you want to look more into brand advertising and not direct response. Again, it depends on the exact context. In some areas, I'd be the first one leading the charge to Google AdWords. In some aspects, for a different type of client or whoever, I would say no. You need a brand advertising campaign. But I'm speaking in generalities, just because obviously I can't preface everything I say with, well, in some cases. So
yep. Yeah, I get it. I think like one of the distinctions, and we had a previous episode which talks about the difference between brand and direct response. I think one of the things that a lot of our listeners are into is like they need money next week or something like that. So a brand campaign possibly, it has its benefits, no doubt, but sometimes you just have to go the direct route, don't you? I guess we've kind of got away from the whole GDPR thing, but you're making
sorry.
Really. That's fine.
Well, actually, can I come full circle?
Yeah, let's do it.
Right. So basically, what GDPR, I believe, is going to force more marketers to move away from direct response or do dataless direct response and move them back toward more brand advertising, the brand advertising part of the promotion mix. Because if we're going to work in a world with, worst case scenario, no personal data, or maybe even just a lot less data, we're going to be less effective with direct response than perhaps we would be with brand advertising campaigns. But again, I don't know for sure. We're all going to sit in our toes, or at least I will, and see what happens on May 25th, 2018.
It's going to be fascinating, isn't it? I'm wondering if we're going to go, marketing has become so data driven, and I know that, look at people like Ogilvy, and whilst they ran tests, a lot of marketing in those days was really art, wasn't it? It was art rather than science. And when you're running a newspaper ad or something, you don't have time to run 500 different split tests, and you don't have time to measure the response in real time and do all this optimization. Perhaps we're going to go back. I know you don't like to go too much in the future, but perhaps that sort of thing is due a bit of a renaissance. It could be really interesting.
Right, it could be. And again, I'm quoting Hoffman. I always like to give due credit where it's due. He had a great line once recently where he said, "We've always had information in marketing, but now we have data." And the difference is that data is people's personal data rather than just information on the market. That's, I think, a big distinction that maybe we'll see ourselves losing, again, that personal level of data and just having general market data instead, like Ogilvy and everyone had in the past, or not. Who knows?
Who knows? What a fascinating topic, and thank you so much for joining us, Samuel. Where can people find out more about you and, of course, book you for the next keynote?
You can Google Samuel Scott. My website, I think, is first or second now. There's also a famous British painter with that name from like the 1700s. But yeah, you can just look for Samuel Scott on Google, or Twitter is probably the best way to reach me quickly, or Facebook or LinkedIn. Yeah.
Perfect. A nice direct response call to action there at the end of a lovely brand building episode for you.
You see, that's why I like the whole promotion mix. You can do both direct response and brand advertising.
Exactly. That's when everyone's happy. Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us, Samuel. This has been absolutely fascinating.
Thank you so much.